Welcome, welcome, welcome. Y'all, I have such an amazing guest here today. I have Dr. Aimie Apigian. Is that correct? Did I say it correct?
Yes,
Woohoo!
that is correct. Great job.
We're going to talk about
Woohoo.
trauma today, and we're going to talk about trauma in all different aspects. So, Dr. Aimie, fill me in. Fill me in as to, I know you've got a massive project coming up here, but really what
Yes.
brought you over here to this? And then we want to dig in a little bit with
Mhm,
keto. We want to talk about emotional eating.
mhm,
Because I think after 2020,
mhm.
there's a lot of different habits that a lot of people started, right? That was trauma.
Right? Yes. Yes, that is all trauma. That is all stored trauma. Yep. And it shows up as coping mechanisms. And we don't even realize that they're coping mechanisms until usually something like a pandemic happens. And then one of our coping mechanisms is taken away. And we're like, I'm losing my mind and I need to find a different coping
Yes.
mechanism. So, yes. I do have a big project coming up. I have a whole summit coming up on the biology of trauma and how it's actually the chronic changes that it causes in our body, in our biology, in our physiology. So many people think of trauma as being psychological. And I'm like, no, you guys, nope. It has become our biology. And so if we're really serious about overcoming our past, those negative life experiences in our past that continue to drive our physical health, mental health, and emotional health, at least subconsciously, we got to look at the biology. And my story actually started around eating and food
Oh,
and
my
keto.
goodness. This is perfect.
I know. Yes. Oh my goodness. I remember that. So what happened is that I adopted a son from the foster care system. He was 4 when he arrived in my home. I thought that I knew everything. I mean, I was in medical school, right? Like I know what these traumatized kids need. And I was wrong. Everything that I knew actually ended up being all wrong. And I got to learn that through personal experience, not through a textbook, but through personal experience. And so that kind of started me on this path of seeing trauma in a very different way. But then several years later down the road, my body gave out. Like I had been pushing myself so hard, ignoring the signals, the messages coming from my body. And here I was in residency, overweight, very depressed, struggling with a lot of anxiety. And that's all I knew. I hadn't done tests yet. So I didn't know the things that I would find later and on those tests. All I knew was that I was overweight and I was depressed and anxious and burned out. And I thought that my weight would solve all of my problems. If I could just lose the weight, I would be happy.
Right?
It was because I was overweight that I was depressed, and I would go out and exercise and then I just would ache more, I would hurt more, and I thought, "Oh, it's just because I'm overweight." I was about 30 pounds overweight. Now that I know what my true baseline healthy weight is. And so what did I do? But I went on a ketogenic diet. Why? Because fastest results, right? Like I want those 2-week results that they promise. So I actually invested in one of those programs that boy, have I learned a lot of lessons, but I invested in one of those programs where it put me in ketosis. And one of the things that I quickly found out was that I was actually using food as a mechanism for managing my anxiety throughout the day. And when you're on a ketogenic diet, you're not eating as much. And especially on one of those very structured meal plans, you're eating a lot less and it's at very specific times. It's not just whenever you want.
Mm-hmm.
And I found myself, I mean, the anxiety went through the roof. If I was challenged with anxiety before, now it was like on the level of panic. And so I realized, ooh, like I must be an emotional eater. I must have a food addiction, a sugar addiction, all of that. So I actually started going to Overeaters Anonymous 12-step program. That's how bad I thought that my situation was. And so that was how I first discovered that, oh my goodness, like I have all of these stored trauma patterns and I have been using coping mechanisms all of my life without realizing it. What I have since discovered is that there's so much that happens in the digestive tract as a result of stored trauma. I don't know who in your audience might be familiar with the vagus nerve and the polyvagal theory and all of this science geeky stuff, right, as it relates to trauma. But the vagus nerve is really where stored trauma it affects the most in terms of the nervous system, because it puts us into this chronic freeze state where we are feeling overwhelmed, and we have this tendency to get overwhelmed pretty quickly with anything in life, whether it be confrontation, whether it be a challenge, an obstacle, or even judgment, even self-criticism. All of that can just quickly put us into this state of overwhelm where we go into this collapse and, if I feel heavy, I feel like I can't do this anymore. And that really impacts the digestive system more than any other thing. And so there's a whole host of stuff that happens, from inflammation and leaky gut, and even down to the stomach acid and the pancreatic enzymes. And so the stored trauma really affects all of our biology, but especially the digestive tract. And this is where a lot of eating and food issues can present themselves without people realizing what's really behind that, and that being stored trauma.
I love it. It's so, I feel like we must have done very similar programs. My audience knows I have a very similar story. The same thing, where for me, I was doing everything but could not lose the weight, right?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
doing
Yep.
CrossFit and eating
Yep.
right and all of that, but
Yep.
did a very strict version of
Yep.
keto, intermittent
Mm-hmm.
fasting, followed the
Mm-hmm.
guys, and then
Mm-hmm.
was told when it wasn't, when I
Correct.
lost my health, I just wasn't
Yep.
doing it right.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's what I was told, right? Like, just
yeah.
eat fewer calories. I was told to restrict my calories to 1,200 calories a day and exercise more.
Hmm.
And I did that for years. I did that all through my teenage years. I did that all throughout my 20s. Like, that was always my perspective. And that's even kind of what I was taught in conventional medicine, right? Like, calories in, calories out. This is the result is your weight.
Hmm.
And going on that strict ketogenic diet and all of that, not only the emotional component, but as well as just the food, because I was also using a lot of dairy in order to accomplish that ketogenic state. And it caused my body to crash. And so that's what precipitated then this me going into my health crash, where I had such severe fatigue that I could not get out of bed. I could not get out of bed and had to take a medical leave from my work for several months in order to get better.
Wow. So, and then this is what, but I love it because it's literally Dr. Heal Thyself, right?
Yes.
Because I had the same experience where, people would laugh and say, why do you take a 2-hour lunch? Because I have to go home and sleep to be able to get through my afternoon, right? Like
Exactly.
that was
Yep.
where I was at. And I
Yep.
couldn't ever tell that to
Mhm.
people, but
Right.
it was like the light at the end of the tunnel. So
Yes.
let's talk about the summit that you've got coming up. I know you've interviewed
Yes.
some amazing speakers.
Hmm. Yeah. So I have interviewed over 40 speakers on stored trauma and how it affects the biology. So I walked through my whole journey and all of the pieces that I had to put into place in order to get back. And actually, it's not only get back to a place of health, it's the best health that I've ever been in. Even before my health crash, like, I realize now, like, I was not in a great state of health. I was just getting by. I was coping. I was managing until that one thing that tipped it over the edge and everything fell apart. But up until then, it was not great. It was not as good as it could have been. And so that's what I have now. And so I'm walking through all of the pieces that I needed to put into place. And that's really what I want to share with people, is that by the time they're having health problems, it's not just going to be one thing. It's not just going to be, oh, take this one supplement, you'll feel great, and the rest of your life will be awesome, right? Or even just a medication, or even a therapy, right? Oh, just go to this one specific type of therapy. Even the best of therapies, whether it be neurofeedback or somatic experiencing, right? Like, by the time you're at this point, it's not going to be just one thing. We have to address the biology and rewiring that nervous system, where those patterns are now so established that they're like paved highways. And even if you change the biology, that's your habit. It's become your way of living. And so we have to rewire that as well. So I brought all these speakers that will address both sides of things for people, and really give them a path forward to getting to a better place in their health, in light of past negative experiences that have been stored in their body, right? Like, the body does carry the burden. The body does carry these memories. And even if we don't have conscious memory of something, that doesn't mean that it's not affecting and driving our health still. So if someone's experiencing physical health challenges, mental and emotional health challenges, I guarantee you there is some aspect, not all the time, but some aspect that is still being driven by stored trauma, past life experiences, and how that's been wired into our body. And in order to help them through that, we got to know where the leverage points are in our biology to address that.
So how are some of the first steps that when you start working with people? I
Yeah.
know every single person is different. All of our
Yeah.
traumas are different, and we're all hardwired a little bit
Yeah.
differently, right? But what are some of the baselines when you just start talking with somebody?
So where I start is where their biggest pain point is.
Mhm.
And again, like you say, it's different for some people. For some people, it's been the brain fog. And they've got, at this point, so much brain inflammation. They have what we call primed microglia. So I have at least 2 different talks on the summit on brain inflammation and primed microglia. What is that? How do you get it? What do you do if you have it? And for other people, it's more their digestive system. And they have inflammation, they have bloating, they have food sensitivities and may not even realize it. So I've got a couple speakers on that topic. We've got even symptoms of joint pain or autoimmune. These are all very strongly related to life stress, actually. And so being able to get to the root of that, especially autoimmune, is strongly correlated with childhood, because it takes a long time for that biology to play out, for it finally to manifest in physical symptoms or a disease or a condition. And so it's that far back that it's been creating these imbalances. So it depends on the person's biggest symptom and pain point in that moment. But whatever it is, whatever their physical health condition is, I am also bringing in this somatic work from the very beginning. And the somatic piece is where we're actually showing them how to read their own survival states. So we have 3 different states of our nervous system. 2 of them are survival. Oftentimes people lump those together. So they say, oh, fight, flight, or freeze. And they're actually not. They are actually 2 very completely different states. One affects, and they each affect our biology completely different. So fight or flight is one, freeze is a completely different one. And being able to recognize when a person has gone into chronic freeze or when they're in that high sympathetic, high energy state, because we need to shift that. We need to be able to shift that, and they need to have the tools to do that themselves. I can't have them waiting to go see a therapist. Oh, I've got my appointment next week, Wednesday. Awesome. And until then, what are you doing?
Exactly.
Because until then, your body is still in chaos. And you need to have the tools, the knowledge and the tools to be able to recognize that and competently just shift your nervous system into a more parasympathetic state where it will then naturally be programmed for your best health. And so I think that especially coming out of, COVID and this pandemic, this is what it has really taught me, is that our mental health on a social level was not as resilient as we thought it was.
No, my gosh. I hear you.
Right?
I've seen it
I
with
mean,
so many people.
exactly. Yes. And across the board, no matter what, we've each, for those of us who's got, unresolved stored trauma, there's been these reaching for different coping mechanisms. Alcohol sales have never been this high. There has never been as many overdoses on drugs. There's never been as much overeating and these kinds of things that are all normal, natural coping mechanisms for a system that is feeling like it's falling apart. Right. And so we can look at it in terms of, hey, this is just stored trauma. We need to rewire this, rather than it being a judgment thing. But we actually can learn the knowledge and learn the tools to be able to do this for ourselves, so that even no matter what happens, we have that within ourselves and feel very empowered to be able to make those changes and bring our whole system to a state of what I call calm aliveness, where we are going to be automatically programmed. Our subconscious, our wiring, our software program in our nervous system is going to be at its best in helping our whole system, biology, physiology, digestive system, everything working at its best.
I love it. And you're speaking my language, right? As a chiropractor, I'm all about the
Yes,
nervous system functioning.
exactly. Yes.
Awesome.
Mhm.
So we will have the link for them to register, but definitely you want to be able to get into the summit to check all of this out, really, because I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, with what 2020 and going into 2021 and where we're at now, and who knows where we're going into, like, we need to shift that course of where we might be heading.
Yep.
And so if we saw already how we've been the last 18 months, let's change your course, make it a
Yeah,
better route.
exactly. Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
let's learn the lessons and actually learn how to build in resiliency, not only get back to a better place of health, but then build in resiliency on a cellular level, on our
yes,
biology, so that then no matter what happens in life, right? Like we're ready for it. There were things that there's always life events that happen that are trigger points for people that before they were managing, but then that makes them fall apart. And you can't always predict that, right? Like you can't always predict when you're going to get that phone call. Someone has passed away. There's been an accident. I'm so sorry. Right? Like we
mhm.
can't predict those events in life. And so we can't wait until those happen to then address our mental health and do this rewiring of our nervous system. We want to do this well ahead of time so that no matter what life brings us, we're solid. We're still solid on on firm ground.
I
Mhm.
agree. Like, to allow your body to better adapt and be resilient through all of
Yes.
this. So,
Yes. Yeah.
um,
And resilience is not a mindset, right? Like it's not just, oh, think, have better thoughts, have more positive thoughts. It's no, it's our biology, it's our nervous system, it's our survival system that drives our thoughts. So
mhm.
so if we're having certain thoughts, that's actually what I teach in some of my courses is your thoughts are only there to inform you what state your nervous system is in. So then you know how to shift it.
I love
don't
it. Gosh,
don't
that's
focus
so
on
great.
the
Yes.
thoughts, just use that to as information of, oh, it looks like today I am in anxiety and sympathetic mode.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
let me
am.
do those exercises. If we stay focused on the thoughts, we never actually change what's driving those. And that's where the problem is, because that same thing that's driving our thoughts is driving the rest of our physical health into disease.
Oh my gosh, I love it. So informative. I cannot wait to, like, deep dive into the summit myself. So,
Yes, and registration has opened and there's already 3 talks that are available to people. So even now, like I pulled out some of the most powerful talks and just put them up front so that people, as soon as they register, they don't have to wait until the whole thing airs on July 19. They've already got 3 very powerful talks, very talks packed full of tools to get you started both on like the somatic piece and even understanding what that is and the stored trauma and what is survival states. So I've got that side of things, and then I got more of the biochemistry side, so people can get started now.
and there's even free downloads, right? Just for
There
going like right now.
yes, there are guides, there are free downloads, there are lots of gifts, lots of awesome things. I've got a Facebook group live going where I'm going live with some of my speakers and bringing additional content. So there's a lot going on already that people should jump on board if they're resonating with this topic.
I love it. Well, Dr. Aimie, thank you so much for your time
Uh,
today. I so appreciate it of all of this.
Thank you very much. Love what you're doing, and
Thanks.
love how you are supporting people in their health.
Oh, right back at you, sister.